The courtroom fell silent as Judge Judy's gavel struck the bench. "Mr. Lawson, I've heard enough." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Cameras rolled, the audience leaned forward, and a man who once walked Wall Street's marble corridors with unshakable pride felt his pulse race. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to him, not on live television. Moments earlier he had smirked, calm, collected, certain. But now his jaw tightened as Judge Judy's next sentence dropped like thunder. "Your bank accounts are hereby frozen." Gasps erupted. Even the bailiff blinked in disbelief. A Wall Street attorney, one of the most cunning legal minds in New York, had just been stripped of his wealth on national television. How did it come to this? What made Judge Judy go so far? And what secret did he try to hide behind those expensive words and polished shoes? Friends, what you're about to hear isn't just a courtroom story. It's a battle between arrogance and accountability, between a man who thought he owned the law and a judge who reminded him he only borrowed it. Before the cameras, before the freeze, before the humiliation that would make headlines around the world, there was Ethan Lawson. To Wall Street, he was a legend. To his peers, a prodigy. And to himself, a god. Ethan grew up far from the glass towers of Manhattan. His story began in a one-bedroom apartment in Newark where his mother worked double shifts at a diner and his father disappeared before his 10th birthday. He was the kid who swore he'd never be poor again. Every book he read, every move he made was fueled by that fire, the hunger to be untouchable. By 25, he graduated top of his law class. By 30, he was defending billion-dollar firms. By 35, he was feared. His suits were custom, his words razor-sharp, his charm disarming. They called him the Wall Street Whisperer. He knew every loophole, every gray area, every invisible crack in the system where truth went to die quietly, and he exploited them flawlessly. Ethan wasn't just good at the law, he was good at bending it. He built his empire not on justice, but on technicalities, on what he could prove, not what was true. But power has a way of blinding even the sharpest minds. When Ethan took on his latest case, a small civil dispute involving a woman named Maria Torres, a single mother who claimed he'd cost her savings, he didn't see a risk, he saw an easy win, another notch on his golden resume. He didn't know that this one would be different. Maria wasn't rich or powerful, but she had something Ethan didn't, the truth and the courage to tell it. The case should have gone through a quiet civil court, but when the media picked it up, a Wall Street attorney accused of deceiving a working-class mother, it drew headlines. Producers saw gold, and they knew the one person who could handle a showdown like this was Judge Judy. Judy had seen it all. Fraudsters, liars, manipulators. Behind her sharp tongue was decades of experience and a moral fire that refused to be dimmed. When she heard about the case, her only question was, does he think he's smarter than the law? When the answer came back yes, she agreed. Ethan laughed when he got the call. "A TV courtroom, please," he scoffed. "I've argued in front of federal judges. This'll be over in minutes." He walked in wearing a suit worth more than his opponent's yearly salary, flashing that grin that had made CEOs crumble. But what he didn't know was that Judge Judy had already read his file, and she'd seen the inconsistencies, the mismatched statements, and the hollow confidence of a man who'd played the system too long.
The cameras started rolling. Ethan opened with charm, dripping confidence. "Your Honor, with all due respect." Judy cut him off. "Don't start with all due respect if you're about to disrespect me." The crowd chuckled, but Ethan didn't. He wasn't used to being silenced. He turned his attention to Maria. "Ms. Torres, do you even understand what a binding financial clause is?" Maria's voice shook, but her words didn't. "I understand when someone lies, sir." The room went still. Ethan smirked, hiding the flicker of unease behind his eyes. He tried to steer the narrative, throwing out legal jargon like smoke bombs, fiduciary negligence, arbitration clause, contract waiver, but Judy wasn't impressed. "Mr. Lawson," she said, "do you think if you use enough fancy words, the truth will sound different?" Every time he dodged a question, she brought him right back. Every time he tried to talk over Maria, Judy cut him down. "You're not in your client's boardroom now, you're in my courtroom." Ethan's smirk began to fade. For the first time, his control slipped. His hands trembled just slightly as he shuffled his papers. The audience felt it, the tension, the unraveling. Then came the moment that changed everything. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Mr. Lawson, you've provided statements showing all your client transactions were handled through domestic accounts, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," he replied quickly. "Then you won't mind submitting the full transaction history, unredacted, for verification." He froze. The smile vanished completely. "That won't be necessary," he stammered. "That information is confidential." Judy's eyebrow rose. Confidential to whom? The truth? Murmurs filled the room. Maria looked confused but hopeful. Ethan swallowed hard. "I can't disclose that, Your Honor." She leaned back, her tone cutting like a scalpel. "Mr. Lawson, when someone refuses to open a window, it's usually because they don't want us to see what's inside." For a few agonizing seconds, the room waited. Judy turned to her bailiff. "Get me his filings from the New York Financial Registry, now." He blinked. "All of them, Judge?" "All of them," she repeated. The air thickened. Minutes later, when the bailiff returned and handed her the documents, Judy's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Lawson," she said, voice lower now, "do you want to explain why there's a transfer to an offshore account under the name E.L. Holdings?" A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Ethan's face drained of color. That's not relevant," he said quickly. "Oh, it's very relevant. Because that's the account where Ms. Torres's investment disappeared to, isn't it?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Maria's hands covered her face, tears slipping through her fingers. Judy continued, her voice now a mix of fury and disappointment. "You thought you could hide behind legal smoke, but you forgot one thing. The truth leaves a trail." Ethan tried to regain composure, but his voice cracked. "This is a misunderstanding." "No, Mr. Lawson," Judy said, rising to her feet. "This is accountability." And then came the words that would echo through newsrooms and social media for days. "Effective immediately, I'm ordering your accounts frozen pending investigation." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, flashes from the cameras. Ethan's hands shot up. "You can't do that." "I just did," Judy replied. "You manipulated a client, falsified documents, and tried to cover your tracks. You don't get to lecture me on the law, not in my courtroom." Ethan looked helplessly at the bailiff. "You can't let her—" The bailiff shook his head. "Sit down, sir." For the first time in his career, Ethan Lawson, the man who thought he could buy justice, sat speechless. The courtroom was quieter than it had been all day. Judy looked at him, not with anger, but with truth. "Mr. Lawson, what we witnessed here today wasn't simply a legal failure, it was a moral one. You used your influence not to protect, but to prey. You thought charm could buy mercy and money could buy patience. But justice isn't for sale. Not here. Not ever." The audience broke into applause. Maria wept openly, the relief washing over her like sunlight after years of shadow. "Your assets remain frozen pending full investigation. You are ordered to compensate Ms. Torres in full with restitution for damages. And Mr. Lawson, you'll answer for your deception before the Bar Association. I suspect your license won't survive this." He lowered his head. The camera zoomed in on Judy's face as she delivered the final blow. "Let this serve as a reminder to anyone watching. Justice doesn't fear power. It exposes it." Her gavel struck once, echoing like a closing door on a man's empire. In the end, what stayed with people wasn't the law or the technicalities. It was that moment when truth triumphed over arrogance. Ethan Lawson's fall wasn't just punishment, it was revelation. Maria walked out not only with her savings, but her dignity. Millions watching at home felt something they hadn't in years. Hope. Friends, tell us in the comments, do you think justice still wins in today's world? Or was this one of those rare moments when truth finally had a voice? Share this story if it touched your heart, if you believe no one, no matter how rich or clever, should stand above the law. Because this wasn't about money. It was about morality. And yet, what if I told you Ethan wasn't the only one? What if another Wall Street insider tried the exact same trick and almost got away with it?
But stories like Ethan's rarely end with the verdict. Because when one man falls, others start watching, not to learn humility, but to learn how not to get caught. In the weeks after the ruling, clips of Judge Judy freezing Ethan Lawson's accounts flooded the internet. The footage went viral across every platform, tens of millions of views overnight. People cheered, hashtags trended, and for a brief moment, justice became entertainment. But behind the headlines, something darker was brewing. Because in a private office on the 48th floor of a glass tower in Lower Manhattan, another attorney, older, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous, watched the video with a smirk. His name was Charles Drayton, and unlike Ethan, he didn't laugh at Judge Judy. He studied her. Every pause, every inflection, every move she made. He wasn't afraid of her judgment. He was planning to outsmart it. Charles had seen the system crack before. He'd seen men rise and fall, fortunes vanish, reputations crumble, but he always stayed 3 steps ahead. When he saw Ethan's empire collapse on live TV, he didn't feel sympathy. He felt opportunity. Lawson got sloppy, he muttered to his associate. I won't. And that's where our next story begins, with a man who didn't just want to beat the system, he wanted to rewrite it. Because while Ethan Lawson's arrogance destroyed him, Charles Drayton's brilliance would make him something far more dangerous, believable. In the next episode, we'll uncover how this Wall Street veteran built an invisible empire of shell companies, how he manipulated investors with digital loopholes, and how one anonymous whistleblower risked everything to expose him. But this time, the stakes wouldn't be a single courtroom or a frozen bank account. It would be billions, and a legal showdown that would make Judge Judy's confrontation look like the calm before the storm. Because the truth is, justice isn't a single moment. It's a war fought case by case, one arrogant smile at a time. So stay tuned, friends. The next story isn't about a man losing his money. It's about a man losing his soul. And trust me, you won't believe what happens when Judge Judy faces him next.